So Austin James, lovely having you on, asking the hard questions. What legacy are we leaving our young? Thank you so much for taking the time to actually come have a chat with me. So, host of the Passion, Pain and Profits show, helping small businesses get unstuck through No-Fluff Consultancy, and business advisor, friend and confidant. You're welcome. Thank you so much.
Teresa, thank you. This is a huge honor and privilege. So I'm grateful to be here today. Thank you for having me.
Not at all. So, what do you do at A. James Consulting?
Really? Well, you nailed it in a nutshell. I mean, I help small business owners and small businesses. I help them get unstuck. You know, a lot of the times, especially if a business has been open maybe for like at least 2 or 3 years or so, there's those plateaus. There's those brick walls that we always hit. We always hit these walls and we don't know what to do, where to go, or how to take things to the next level, or we feel like all of our efforts or all of our hard work we've got nothing to show for it. It's going out the window. Right. So my goal is to come into those businesses, especially those ones that are focused on trying to grow. I'll come in, I'll evaluate the situation. In a nutshell, I'll provide them the strategies and tactics, and we'll implement them together step by step, nice and easy. And the goal is to get them unstuck and to get them even more profitable than they were before. So that's what I do.
What are the key elements that lead to a company becoming stuck, do you think?
Well, I think, there's usually about 9 sticking points that I've noticed. But I know that the biggest one is really, sometimes it's just the business owner itself. Because sometimes, and I've noticed this, at least in my profession and in my experience working with clients, my personal biggest challenge in my business is helping the business owner to kind of get out of his own way. Because sometimes what happens is that, everyone that's built their business from the ground up, they know exactly what I'm talking about, that their heart and their passion is wrapped up in that business. So sometimes it gets a little difficult to change things, especially if you've had your business, you've been running it a certain way for a couple of years. It's hard to change things and kind of step out of your comfort zone. But once we kind of get to that point, that's when all the opportunity opens up. That's when we can implement new strategies, new tactics, everything new we can put into the business to help them get unstuck. So as long as they really have that mindset where they're tired of the current situation, they're tired of their business kind of being in a stalled position, and they're ready to do whatever it takes to grow and expand, you just got past one of the biggest sticking points of anything.
Right. So I suppose self-limiting beliefs is what holds them back.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, it could be that. It could be pride. It could be ego. When I'm coming in as a third party perspective, I don't have any emotional connections to the business, but they do. So I've got a different perspective. I got a different vantage point when I'm looking at the business and looking in it as well. It's a little difficult if you are kind of in the mix, if you are in the business, to see what's going on, see what's missing, what's not working. And also if you don't have maybe like that level of accountability, you might know what's wrong or what needs to be done, but if you don't have someone kind of like poking you with a stick to tell you to actually do it. Yeah, exactly. If you don't have someone kind of just holding you accountable as well, might not get done. So I kind of provide both of those perspectives. So the third party perspective is what I provide, as well as the accountability partner.
Right. So you can come in, minus the emotion, look at it dispassionately, look at it objectively, and see where the pitfalls are.
Yeah, exactly. Because a business in itself, it's nuts and bolts. A business in itself, it grows based on logic. That's how a business grows. Now, how people do these things, the people that are involved in the business, that throws the emotional element. But a business itself, it's logic. It's nuts and bolts. It's inanimate. So when I'm coming in, since I don't have any emotion tied to the business, I'm looking at it from a strictly logical viewpoint. So since that's the case, then I can think a little bit more clearly. I don't have emotional feelings or apprehensions kind of fogging my vision when I'm looking at the business. I'm coming in, I'm saying, hey, we're missing this, this, and this. We've got some hidden assets. These are some great opportunities we can capitalize on. This is what we can maximize over here. This is what we can replace because it's not doing this. So it lets me come in a little bit more intentionally when I'm working with the business. Yeah.
So what is it from your own life's experience, your own work experience that brought you to this career?
Well, it's funny. I mean, when I started this business, I actually started this business. This is my third one. I started this business last year, a little over a year ago, and I was actually doing financial consulting. So I was basically a personal finance coach. I was helping individuals, educating them and guiding them step by step to overcome their personal financial troubles and help them to kind of improve and progress. So that's what I was doing. I mean, I got certified to do that. I was certified as a financial education instructor. So I was an advocate for financial literacy. But what happened is that a little bit into the business, a little bit of time in, I ran into my first entrepreneur client. And, when I usually was working with clients doing the financial side of things, I'd always make financial reports. So they'd be just like report cards showing us the black and white of what's going on. So in her situation specifically, she just needed more income. That was it. She just needed more income, and that would have been just the only thing that we need to do to improve the situation. But her income is her business. She is the entrepreneur. So I was already learning strategies. I was already learning tactics and about productivity and marketing as well. I was already applying them for myself. I said, hey, well, instead of just telling her she needs more income, why don't you show her? Sure. So our meetings following that, they started to merge more into that kind of business consulting side. It started talking more about advice in her marketing strategies and being more productive, how she can manage her time better, since it was just her. And then I fell in love with that. I fell head over heels for that. Got certified first to be a general business consultant. Then I got accredited a little bit later on, and that's been it.
So that's what led to where you are now. Wow. Yeah. And so have you worked with many entrepreneurs since then?
Yeah, I've so far. I mean, I've consulted 23 different industries. Actually, it might be 25. I know it's between 23 and 25 different industries. So not just businesses, but actual like industries. And it's interesting because what you'll notice is that one industry has no idea what another industry is doing. Sometimes businesses within the same industry have no idea what each are doing as competitors. But what you'll also see is that the challenges and the common problems, they're usually around the same. Now, I obviously, depending on the industry, depending on the business, how you approach them you might have different tactics, just strategies based off of what they are. But a lot of them have like very similar problems, very similar problems, very similar concerns, very similar challenges. So
and a lot of them around the human factor, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, definitely, especially when it comes to, we need more I hear it all the time. We need more clients. We need more customers. How can we do that? Okay. So I think that's probably been the biggest challenge that these guys are always experiencing is I need more clients. I need more customers,
And you don't get involved with the internal problems of the running of the business and the whole human dynamic.
So it definitely does depend. Okay. I mean, it definitely does depend, because if it's skill development on the, maybe it's the sales team or it's the owner himself, if it's a skill development type issue, I don't tap into that, but I have to recognize that, because if that is the issue that we need to solve, we need to get them in front of maybe someone that's, let's say if it's a sales issue, we're having issues with conversions. After we've done analysis of why we're not converting or what we're not doing right, who else, what other professional do we need to bring in to train your sales team, for example, or train you in better consultative selling? You know, if there's something going on the financial side, I can understand the books. I can look at the books. You know, I can notice if there's some issues or some complications. But I'd rather suggest also to have an accountant or bookkeeper on board. You know, so the human element, it definitely depends. If it's something that is definitely getting in the way of them kind of getting unstuck, of them progressing, then that's something we have to address. But if it's not really detrimental, I don't necessarily get involved too much.
Good, get involved. So would you agree that adaptability is the key to survival in the business from here?
Absolutely. Absolutely. See, what happens is that a lot of business owners and businesses in general, they shut down so early because of lack of adaptability. They're too passive. You know, a lot might have the mindset that if I put a sign out front, that immediately I'll get clients and customers, no matter what kind of economic, you know, situation is going on, or what kind of pandemic or what kind of world crisis is happening. But it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. And you have to be creative. You have to have an expansive mindset. You have to think critically as well. And if you continue to do that and you adapt to what's going on, to the changes in the marketplace, to changes in the industry, changes nationally, locally, internationally, if you can adapt, you'll stay in the game, you know.
I know. So we're really at a crossroads as we exit, I suppose, COVID-19, as we survey the fallout. What will the future of work look like, do you think? What are the major changes that we can expect?
Well, I know when it comes to outside of the entrepreneurial realm, I know when it comes to, you know, just kind of like general labor, not general labor, but kind of those in the corporate sector and things like that. I see and I hear a lot. I hear a battle between individuals and their employers and upper management going up against each other because of hybrid work, regarding, you know, either working from home, working in the office, or a mixture of both. And then on the other side of the spectrum, I'm seeing headlines regarding the Great Resignation. You know, so I think what's going to continue to happen. I mean, it's funny because that Great Resignation, the phrase is thrown around so often, especially like on LinkedIn where we met. But I don't see it. I mean, everyone I know, and I've got a pretty good circle, everyone's staying at their job. So it's happening somewhere. But I think that what's going to happen is that if these companies, these larger companies, don't kind of follow that adaptive mindset, like you mentioned previously, there's definitely going to be an influx. There's going to be an influx of people leaving their jobs or changing professions and kind of either going out on their own, or these employers are going to have a lot of issues. They're going to have a lot of problems with people.
And do you think that the hybrid work is going to be the future for work?
I don't see why not. You know, I think about it all the time. And I know there's a lot of conspiracy, there's a lot of theories, there's a lot of hypothesis around, you know, why these larger companies are still requiring, you know, they're kind of demanding their employees to come into work, into the office. I don't necessarily see why though, because I would imagine, I mean, if there's no employees, if employees are staying at home, they're working from home, they're still doing what they've got to do, that's less overhead for these companies. That's how I'm looking at it. It's less overhead. So why have people in the office when they can do exactly what they're doing at home? And
but the advantages of starting out maybe in the office and creating connections, getting to know each other, etc., lends itself better then to the hybrid or retreating to working from home.
that's a very
Would
good
you see it being a disadvantage if new hires were coming on board and immediately starting to work from home?
That's actually a really, really great point. Yeah, I didn't even think about it that way, but that totally makes sense because it is a different dynamic. It's a different dynamic being in the office with with your actual coworker, as opposed to just having a Zoom call with them, especially if you don't have that connection with them. Having just Zoom calls, multiple times a day or for hours on end, it just won't, yeah, you're right. It won't really, it won't connect right.
And that notion of creating a culture in the workplace,
Mm,
I feel it's more difficult to do it from a distance.
absolutely.
You
Absolutely.
know?
Yeah, there's got to be legitimate connection. That's going to tie into productivity. I mean, these companies now, they can definitely enforce and they can monitor, productive habits. I mean, if I'm at working from home, but I'm still using the company's system to do my work. I mean, they could track, they can see if I'm slacking off or not. I mean, if I'm not reaching my numbers or reaching my quotas, they can see that. And I think most people realize that as well, that just because you're working from home doesn't mean it's it's
Yeah.
not less quality work. But I think you definitely do have a really phenomenal point there, though, because it's a different mindset shift, and it's a different dynamic.
There's
Um,
the thing of trust that you
right.
mentioned, trust that the work is being done, etc. But it can be quite alienating to be, particularly whatever stage you're at in your life, perhaps when you're younger, the 20-somethings can find it quite isolating to be working
Right.
from home. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I can that makes a lot of sense. And you know what? That makes yeah, because I was looking at it from more of the see, so now you see what I do in my business. I look at it from the logical, oh, it's less overhead. Keep them home. Then the emotional side, the cultural, I mean the cultural development, the skill development. See, that's why you're better at that than I am.
Oh, well, maybe we'd work well together. How you first came to attention for me was this posting about side hustles.
Mhm.
Talk to me a little bit about that as a concept.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, a side hustle is a small business with limited time. That's all it really is. It's not a 9 to 5, it's a 5 to 9. That's what a side hustle is. And I've understood and I've seen people and I've had side hustles myself. And my goal, I mean, a lot of people, they have their different goals and different ambitions when it comes to side hustles. It could just be simply just a little extra income on the side. It could just be me doing my passion on the side and getting a little bit of money on it. Nothing wrong with that. And then others, it was their goal to take that side hustle, grow it to the point where it's sustainable and they can leave their current job, maybe that they're miserable or just not really happy about anymore. So I wanted to attack that because I could relate. I've had side hustles, and usually when I started my side hustles, it was to kind of usurp the 9 to 5 that I was working. You know, but I get that, and that was more of my kind of niche. So not just generalities, general side hustles, but the side hustlers, quote unquote, that wanted to take this to the next level. They had that fire, they had the ambition to make it more than
So
just little extra income.
it fulfills a need at a time, maybe. It may fulfill a financial need, but also I think it can very often keep somebody alive in maybe a job that they're not particularly in love with,
Right.
but they are cut in terms of having to do the day job in order to pay the bills,
Right.
look after their family, etc.
Yeah.
So it is nice to think that it may grow into something that one can leave the mainframe job and make this their main career. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's all in all, I mean, a side hustle is it's a symbol of hope. I mean, that sounds a little cliche, but it is though, because if I'm starting this side hustle, I'm starting this with the hope of getting away from what's been making me uneasy or uncomfortable or miserable, my 9 to 5. So that's why I would start the side hustles, because it gave me hope that, you know what, okay, I may hate the job that I'm working at, but this is not all there is. My side hustle, I can grow. If I put enough effort, I can grow this, I can take it, I can make this my full-time gig.
And maybe working from home might gets people into a different mind frame, different way of looking at work as a concept, and maybe side hustle is the future.
It really could. It really could, because especially when things, I think the term, I mean, the side hustle term really blew up since last year, if anything, because I feel like when a lot of businesses shut down, a lot of companies had shut down during the pandemic, and there's people that are just who were reliant on this source of income. When they've got that time on their hands, I mean, they're finding hobbies, but now they're also thinking about, if this happens again, what do I do?
Absolutely. So it's
You know,
it's about protecting yourself and galvanizing yourself for the storm ahead, or the
right,
possible storm ahead. And do
right.
you think our youths, our young who are entering the workforce now, Generation Z, do you think they have the stuff that it takes for that type of they have that type of resilience to answer the needs of tomorrow?
I think that I think there's ample resources. There's ample resources out there that literally, if you want to do anything, you can find the resources. So it's not I don't think it's a lack of resources. It's just a lack of being resourceful.
Right.
So if the youth of the next generation actually if someone has that desire to make that difference, if someone has that desire and the ambition and the drive to actually start something and grow it, they've
It
got
will happen.
they've got everything they need. They've got
Mhm.
everything right there. And there's so much, I mean, like, there's so much free information out there too. A lot of individuals, even ones that have, are well known in the community, they put out so much free information, valuable information. So literally, if you just combine and take in as much as you can, or you work with coaches, or you work with or you find the right books, or you find the right influencers, or role models to look up to, you can do whatever you want.
One of the byproducts of Zoomification really has been that ease of access to information, upskilling, etc. Anywhere, anytime, really. It's about embracing it. Yeah. But I often wonder, do we give too much credence to work? Do we give it too much time in our lives? Does it interfere too much with living?
I think I think it depends on your goals. I think it depends on your goals, because why did you start your business? Why did you do this? Did you do this so that you can make millions and millions? I mean, if that's your goal, that is. Did you do it so that you can have actually more time freedom? Did you do it for a little extra? Like, why did you start your business? I think that I feel like nowadays, especially because so many individuals are more, I mean, I feel like society as a whole is more focused on their mental health more than anything. I've been hearing that for more than usual, at least since like last year. A lot
Sure.
of individuals are focused on their mental health, and a lot of it to boost their mental health is definitely not working. It's taking time off to actually enjoy the things that you're doing. So do we as a society put a lot of impetus on work? I think so, but I also think it's individual. It might just be an individual basis too, because there
Yeah.
are, there's workaholics. There's individuals that work a little bit and they're cool with what they've got, and they'll let it take its time to grow its business. There's others that are balancing their home life, their family life, with their business, with their own personal hobbies, like me. But
It's individualistic. Yeah. It depends on the person.
yeah, it's such an interesting question though, because it really does take, I think that's one of those questions that you have to ask yourself.
Mhm.
You have to ask yourself, and you have to be very intentionally self-reflective when you're talking about that, because if you find yourself working all the time, and you're passing up the opportunities that you actually started your business to have more time for, we've got some issues. We've got some,
You have to find a balance. Yeah.
yeah, we've got some imbalances. So I think everyone as a whole should find that balance, you know.
I came across a poem called The Toad, written by Philip Larkin, and I'll give you the smile. He says, why should I let the toad work squat on my life? Can't I use my wit as a pitchfork and drive the brute off? 6 days of the week it soils with its sickening poison just for paying a few bills. That's out of proportion. And then about 7 stanzas later, he says, were I courageous enough to shout, stuff your pension. But I know all too well that's the stuff dreams are made of. So he was in a job that he just hated, but he found he was locked in and he was dreaming of a better way of doing things, you know?
Yeah.
So Mark Twain, he said, if you want to change the future, you must change what you are doing in the present. What do you think is in most need of change in 2021 in order to leave the world and the world of work in a better place for our young?
I think we have to change our perception on what's normal and what's considered normal. I think that for such a long time, there's just this kind of a concept of my normal life is, you know, I go to school, I graduate high school, I go to college, you know, I do four plus years in college. From there, I enter the workforce. I would do that until I'm 65 or so, until retirement age, at least over here in the States, 65. And then I get to retire. I get to, you know, maybe 15, 20 years, and then that's it. That's the usual normal thought process.
Trajectory, yeah.
But if we want real change, then we've got to change up what that level of normal actually is. Now, obviously, finishing school is great, but do I have to go to college to enter the workforce? Do I even have to enter the workforce? Can I start my own business that's going to be successful? Do I have the tools for that? If I don't enjoy what I'm doing, I mean, there's a lot of, you know, the gig economy is a real thing too. So there's a lot of little small things you can do that could kind of make up, you know, your income anyways. I mean, if you want to leave your 9 to 5 and start doing food delivery, but you're making maybe 3/4 of what you made before, is it worth it?
But you're doing your two-way, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, can you live a more simplistic life to enjoy exactly what you're looking forward to do? So you can be, I mean, you can be doing your 9 to 5, and then you can come home and do your side hustle. And you can do that for the rest of your life. And if you want to, that's awesome. Or you could quit your 9 to 5. You can find those little gigs where you're making maybe half of the income, 3/4 of the income that you did before. Now you've got more time freedom, and your side hustle is not a side anymore. That's your full-time hustle. Now you're just doing these little things to kind of support yourself. So yeah, it's just, I think what needs to change is our level of creativity and our current state of open-mindedness. If we can kind of expand our thinking,
our risk taking, our ability to take a risk. But so if I were to ask you, what are the key skills required for survival in the future for our young coming up? And the education systems as we have them worldwide, are they preparing our young with these skills for the future?
I think, to be politically correct, I think the educational systems are doing everything they can. No, I think there's only so much that you can be taught. I mean, you can be taught a lot of things in school, and I think that teaching kind of like those basics is good, but there's some aspects that could definitely be taught. I mean, a lot of the subjects could be more practical, if anything. For example, like financial literacy is not talked about. A lot of people have to figure out how to manage their money and all of that after school.
That's true.
You know, especially if their parents aren't really the best example. So that's something that needs to be addressed. Honestly, I think if that was addressed and that was taught in school, and the next generation or the youth were kind of exposed to that really early on in their lives. I mean, we learn math from super young ages. Why can't we learn, economics? Why can't we learn, how to save and what debt is and stuff like that, instead of figuring out the hard way?
That's a brilliant point. Absolutely brilliant point. But do they want us to know?
That's the other thing. I've heard some great rebuttals with that one too, that the reason they don't teach that is because if we have to figure it out on our own, usually we're figuring it out through means of debt.
Absolutely.
That keeps
Digital literacy is a big one for the future. I mean,
yeah.
our young are spending inordinate amounts of time on their phones and on their computers, to the detriment of developing other skills like the interpersonal, etc., which is in turn showing itself when they enter the workplace.
Right.
So while it may serve a need in the workplace, personally, they're not really developing themselves as they should really for life alongside work.
Right.
It's a difficult one.
I think what makes that a little bit challenging too, because I totally agree with you too. We're moving into a more advanced digital age. I mean, my nieces, one's 5 and the other one's 1. But back when my niece was like maybe 2 or 3, she was already on my phone, on the iPad. Like no one had to like mess with stuff. So I didn't have that. But I think what makes that challenging is that because technology changes so fast.
Yes.
I mean, by the time what I learned in school, it's already gone. It's already been replaced. Whatever app or software I'm thinking about using, it's already been replaced with something new and improved, because the tech space is it's always exploding. People love the tech space. They invest in tech. I mean, that's the future of things.
Yeah. So that the future of work, really, can we even envisage it? If you speak in these terms of the advancement being so rapid, I mean, the jobs these youngsters will be doing, are they invented yet?
I don't think so. I mean, I think, because this is how I think about things too. I mean, if we take it back to maybe like the 50s or the 60s, everyone thought that by 2000, we'd be in this super technological age. I mean, there was jokes, there was cartoons, there was theories, everything about, the year 2000, flying cars, the Jetsons was such a huge thing. But here we are still on the ground. But then you fast forward to, nowadays, now we've got vehicles, now we've got technology that's kind of blowing our minds of what we expected years ago. Cars that are driving themselves. I've seen concept art in for like floating cars and stuff like that. There's tech, it grows so quick. So have the jobs been created yet? I don't think so. Because we still have these perceptions of, okay, in a couple of decades from now, I mean, the world was supposed to end back in 2012. So even though, we've got these ideas and we've got kind of like a lot of evidence and a lot of things here that can give us some pretty good educated projections, I don't think we'll ever know. We might know maybe like the next couple of years, but who saw COVID happening, 5-6 years ago? And 5 years isn't a far off projection either. I mean, if I said, okay, show me what things will look like in 5 years, I mean, anyone can project that. That's within a close period of time, but no one saw that coming.
No. So there's a book I read by Barat. It's Artificial Intelligence at the End of the Human Era. And he quotes Bostrom on superintelligence. And it's mind-boggling. He says superintelligence is radically different in a technological sense, but its achievements will change the rules of progress. Superintelligence will invent the inventions and set the pace of technological advancement. Right. Humans will no longer drive change, and there will be no going back. Sort of eerie, And so are we living really in an era in which science fiction is becoming a reality?
Absolutely. I think absolutely, because some of the weirdest things you can think of, especially when it comes to technology, it's getting done. I mean, we've got things like Siri on our cell phones, AI, we've got Alexa. I just saw a commercial the other day of a refrigerator that now has a touch screen on it and can talk to you. I think it has built-in Alexa. Home security systems are being backed up by these AI systems that we've created. So anything you can think of. I mean, a lot of people don't even they can still be home even when they're not home now.
And is the price we pay the end of privacy?
I think whether people like to admit it or not, it definitely is. I know there's a lot of individuals that go great lengths to make sure that they kind of protect that right to, the right to privacy. And I think to an extent, yeah, you've got it. But if you're kind of indulging yourself in a lot of these, technological items, you're kind of,
that's the trade-off.
Yeah, you're putting yourself out there. I mean, we've got social media. I mean, social media has been a way to check on, that's another form of background check, if anything, nowadays. I mean, you've got social media, you've got your cell phones that are now backed up by the governmental systems and tracking. If you've got a piece of technology, you can be tracked, you can be found, you can be tracked. It's been like that. And it's interesting that people may resent that, but I think they kind of have to accept it as this is going to be the new norm. It's going to be the new norm.
But is there a kind of theft in it, a loss in terms of designing your future the way you want to, unimpeded by outside forces?
Well, I think that comes down to the discussion of what a person considers as actual like freedom from those things as well. Yeah. Because I mean, I think people strive for, and they might have the thought process that when it comes to freedom, it's absolute freedom, but there's no real absolute freedom. I mean, sure, I can do whatever I want, but there's always going to be an after effect with it.
There'll be consequences. Yeah.
Yes. So does the advancement in technology, does that hinder my freedom? It's going to be based on what my perception of freedom actually is. If I want to be completely free of all technology, I've got to go completely off the grid. I've got to live in the forest in the cabin with no technology and just a candlelight and a pot of beans over a fire. That's going to be as free as you can get, but even then you can still be tracked. But
and if you can consider the millennials, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, they're going to account for 70% of the workforce by 2029. So that's the conversion. If their mindset has been converted, they've been converted to the iPhone and tracking and everything else, it's a fait accompli. It has happened.
It's going to be a different age. We're already at the beginning of kind of like this new age, this new era, because now it's a technology war nowadays, because now it's starting to get to the point where we're starting to automate literally everything that we do. Humans are getting, it's a fact. Humans are progressively getting lazier and lazier because we're creating these phenomenal devices, these phenomenal technological advancements, but they're compensating for a lot of our just usual tasks. So, eventually it'll get to the point where there is no manual labor because we've got technology, we've got machinery to handle these different aspects of business. Now, will that be as soon as 2029? I don't know if it'll be that soon, but I know that's kind of like the direction of how things are going. There's definitely not going to be a regression.
In saying that we're getting lazier,
yeah,
in many ways we're going to become de-skilled.
You know what? That's a really great point, because I've heard that before, that social skills will start to regress for sure. And this, you know what, this actually ties back to your initial point earlier in our discussion too, of, you know, if we're doing this hybrid work, or if we're working from home, there's not, I mean, there's less social skills involved than actually being in the office, sitting next to a person, or working alongside someone. It's two different dynamics.
Sure.
So because of this technology, and especially because we're designing this technology to be very not just distracting, but also engulfing of our time and energy.
Sure.
We're going to be more focused, I think, as a society, we're going to be more focused kind of on our own individual agendas as time goes on, as opposed to, you know, how things used to be.
I read a report recently that reported 97% of American youth have an iPhone, and the average time spent on the iPhone per day, 10 hours.
Yeah.
Which ties right into what you're saying.
Because look at what the first cell phone did, as opposed to what the iPhone does now. And it doesn't help that the iPhone puts like a new update out every year. But the first cell phone, it compensated for what? It compensated for us being able to, you know, we don't have to send letters and postcards to people we want to talk to. You just pick up the phone, didn't even have text. We just pick up the phone, type the number. Now I can talk to you wherever I want.
Sure.
So it took away, that right there took away the need for actual like face-to-face interaction, because I could just call you.
Some would say that in the future we won't need to know how to write. We just speak to the machine will just put it out there.
Well, we could do that now.
But in many ways, we would lose that precision with our hands and that dexterity and everything that that evolved with us.
Yeah, no, that makes
in the millennia, you know?
That makes total sense. That makes total sense, because a lot of the skills that you have now, I mean, I don't need to use the skills I was taught regarding math from school anymore. I can take out my phone, I can go on the calculator, and I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't have to apply the thought processes I learned in, let's say, science class, because I can go on my phone now. I can go on the internet in the blink of an eye, go to Google, ask whatever question I'm looking for. I've got a whole encyclopedia right there.
And the downside of it really is that you're open to false information on these devices, and you become less critical. Yep. And the whole concept of democracy ultimately changes.
Right.
You know, but so describe for me the survival kit of the entrepreneur of the future.
Oh, the survival kit. So
throw in an iPhone there, and what else?
Yeah, making sure that every business owner has an iPhone. The survival kit is one thing that does not change. Is relationships, though. One thing that does not change is relationships. I mean, there could be less social skills, sure, but there's always going to be relationships, even if they're not as good as they were, you know, not thousands, but decades ago and things like that. If you've got great business relationships, because this is my number one top, if you had to take away every strategy in the book, if you had to take away every tactic in the book for business growth, except one, if I only was left with one, it would be through endorsements. It would be through using relationships to grow my business.
Belonging. That's belonging, yeah?
Yeah, because you know what, when you think about capital, I mean, you throw the word capital out there to a business owner, 9 times out of 10, they're going to think about money. They're going to think about, financial capital. That's it. And that's true. But you've also got intellectual capital, but then you've also got relational capital. Mm-hmm. And if you've got those right relationships, that is capital. That's going to open up so many doors for you. Sure. You know, it could open up more doors than it would if I spent some money on it. if I put a dollar down. I can ask someone that may have my same target market, but has built, that loyalty and that relationship with them. I can have them put out an endorsement for me,
Sure.
to endorse me and my business and my service and it doesn't cost me a penny. All it does is cost me 10 seconds to shoot a text message,
Yeah,
but
I often think, THC Consult, my company, Total Human Capital, I often put the twist on it, the human as capital. The human
yeah,
is the capital. Yeah. So I'm asking you one last question.
okay.
The future, a highway to prosperity or a maze navigated only by the highly capable?
Oh boy, I think I want to lean more towards the maze of highly capable. Um, and I'm going to lean more towards that, and I'll tell you why. Because there definitely could be the hybrid effect as well, but I think the you'll need the highly skilled. Those are going to be the pioneers, because as technology continues to grow, and we see more advancement, there's going to be more complexity. So, a person that might not have any technological experience, they might need a job, but they're not going to be able to get in there, because there's so much complexity, and it's not just a simple, I need an employee at a grocery store anymore. It's not going to be like that. I need someone to run a campaign digitally within our SaaS company. We're trying to sell software. It would get so complex. So I think what's going to happen is that there's going to be a larger number of highly skilled individuals, but I think that's going to be starting. I think that's starting now, where people that are now trying to dive into the technology field or into these trades. I think that's starting now. So if you can, it would be smart to get in now before things take off and you're trying to learn a skill, 20, 30 years from now. It'll be
I suppose another way of looking at it is there may be a greater number left behind in the future unless they get in there and get skilled.
Right. And I think people will get left behind too, because the educational systems won't be able to keep up with what's going on.
That's happening already.
We're still learning the same subjects as that individuals have been learning for decades.
Sure.
Science, English, social studies, math, and lunch. We've been learning the same the same subjects forever. So either things need to change there.
It's the place to start, I think. Education is the place to start. And the whole human mindset.
Yeah,
the home and education. And unless the education system rises to meet the challenge, there will be great loss.
Right.
Only that the most able will thrive.
Right. Yeah, because things won't. I know what I was taught back in school, I mean, it served its purpose, but it doesn't hold any weight to what's going on currently.
No relevance now. Yeah. So we have to make education more relevant.
Right.
And teach the skills, and particularly the soft skills, the emotional intelligence, the soft skills, because I believe that they are greatly under threat now.
Right. Especially since a lot of schools, like elementary schools, they're going hybrid. They're going on Zoom and stuff like that. So I think that's going to be the biggest impact, because children aren't having that interaction between each other. That's going to have a lot of problems. It's worse than us. At least as adults, we kind of understand what to say, what not to say. Well, some of us, we understand kind of like how to act, but with children, I mean, you learn through interaction.
That's that's a very important point. That unless we stay in there with the school as we know it, for the interaction and for the development of all of the human skills, unless we hold on to that, we're in trouble.
Right.
So here, it has been lovely talking to you. I really enjoyed the chat. Thank you so much for your time, and I will continue to follow you with interest.
Likewise. I really appreciate this. I love this conversation. It was very intellectual, which is very good. I loved it. And like I said, it's been my privilege to be here today.
Not at all. Not at all. Take care. And I hope you inspire many along the way.